Hey, welcome to another Mixed Media Monday. I'm Eric Scott, and I'm ready to dive in to make another little mixed media piece, all within about a half an hour. So if you want to join me, grab some materials, and let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I've got my 4 by 4 inch piece of mixed media paper. I'm using Strathmore 400 series paper. I've got some plastic mesh. I've got some collage materials. Maybe I'll use a map, but I think I'm going to turn to one of my favorite things, and that's a security envelope. And I love using something that would probably get thrown away, especially since I do a lot of banking online and such. So it's like, hey, what we're going to do with this free fodder. So I just trim off the ends, and then I've got, this nice pattern on the inside. So I want to use some of this to begin with. So I'm going to use some collage to kind of get stuff going on my paper today, and we'll kind of see where things go from there. So I'm thinking I want to do some torn collage. So I'm just going to tear some of this up, some different shapes. But I like the straight edges because then I can put them in a corner or put them on the side, and just kind of play around with that. So I'm liking that. Let me go ahead and get that glued down. So grab some glue paper and grab my glue stick. So oftentimes I start mixed media pieces with watercolor or with ink or something. Um, but just as well, probably not as often, but uh, nothing says I can't start it with collage. So I'm thinking about doing a pretty specific type of imagery. Just excuse me, somebody had requested maybe doing what I call a crack image, and it's something that I've worked on, and it's a type of image that just came about from a lot of experimenting. And really, the crack is about emergence and about something like cracking and coming out of, kind of breaking free kind of notion. And so I might try that, and we'll kind of see where that goes. Okay, just looking, I want to have another piece in there like that. You know what? That's a little bright. Let me go ahead and turn this down. It's a problem with it's the problem with this setup. Sometimes it's like, oh, I don't quite get the lighting and the exposure correct. Okay, so I'm thinking something like that. All right. All right, so I've got that glued down. I'll trim the excess off in a few minutes, but I'm planning on painting on top of this. And I found that even though this glue stick works really well, if the glue's not totally dry and I paint on top of it, it has a tendency to peel off more than if it's totally dry. So I'm going to hit this with my hair dryer. And normally I just let it dry on its own, but I'm gonna hit it with the hair dryer and really kind of get that glue really dry, and then I'll trim it and then I'll paint it. And like I said, that's really just gonna help the glue to dry, and it's not gonna it will be less likely to come undone as I paint over, because even though the glue stick is really good, um, it is water soluble, and so it does clean up with water, and especially whenever it's wet, So if it's not totally dry, then it can really peel up. It can still peel up even once it's totally dry, but it's less likely to do that. All right. So now I've got that going on. Let's go ahead and grab some paint. I'm thinking more of earthy colors today. So I'm going to start off with this ochre, one of my favorite colors. Just going to slather some of that on. And I don't mind if there's some darker spots and some lighter spots. And I don't mind if I don't paint the whole thing. Actually, since that's still wet, I'm gonna hit it up with this red oxide, which is kind of a rusty color. And so we'll do a little bit of splattering, and then those spots will bleed and blend. Maybe I'll get more of that ochre, do the same thing. Okay. So I'm kind of liking how the spots aren't really distinct. They've kind of bled a little bit, have softened because of the water. Okay, go ahead and hit that with the hair dryer and dry it up. Okay, I'm going to pull in my plastic mesh, and I want to use that to create that grid that I've done before. Use the brown. I'm not going to do the whole surface, but I'm going to bounce around, kind of do it randomly. So the crack image, as I've called it, really came about from some experiments that I did a few months ago. Well, more than a few months ago now. But I was just kind of doing some painting and just wanted to experiment, and it just sort of developed. And I think part of being an artist is that you want to be open to trying new things and experimenting and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And sometimes you don't know where it's going to go. You don't know what you're trying to communicate with it. And but I think as an artist, you want to try to do that. You want to try to figure out, like, well, what am I trying to communicate? And so with this crack image, it really, at first, it kind of was feeling like a body of water, but I really started seeing it as a crack, like a crack in an eggshell, and that there was something under the surface trying to break out, to break free. And it wasn't just something that came to me one day. I did a lot of writing and reflecting on it, and really experimented with the idea, played around with it, and did a whole bunch of paintings with it. And I don't know if I have any of that available for people to check out, but I've shared it on social media, so you can always maybe check out there. You go ahead and dry it. So I think we often, as artists, develop images or sort of become fixated or obsessed with images, and we explore them. It's not a one and done thing. We don't just do it once and then be like, okay, that's all I need to do for that. I think it really is a matter of exploring it and trying it in different ways, and really pushing it to see what's there, and just trying different things with it. All right, so I was looking for this one. I'm going to sharpen this pencil, so I apologize when you hear the sharpener. Okay, so I do use an electric sharpener. I know some people are like, oh, I only use a handheld sharpener. Anyway, I'm thinking, actually, now that I think of it, I think I want to add some contrast. Let me pull out. This color is called Shiraz, and it looks brown. So when I'm putting it on right now, it's kind of brown looking, but it is really kind of a red wine color, hence the name Shiraz. And this is the Derwent Inktense pencils. And I like the Inktense. It's become one of my favorite water soluble pencils because of its transparency. And so it seems like most colors have a really nice transparency. All right, so just kind of using some mapping type marks, and then you'll see how this, like I said, it looks kind of brown now, but as soon as I paint over it, it really kind of brings out that red wine kind of color with it. Actually, I'm going to switch brushes. So it's still kind of a dark, not very bright reddish color. So it's not like a bright like crimson red or scarlet red. So it should help, should tie into the colors that I've picked, the browns and the ochres. All right, let's go ahead and try that. Okay, now I think I'm going to go back. I had that brown, so I'm going to go back to this. Maybe just kind of introduce some rectangles and squares. So with this crack, it's going to be a little bit more of an abstract piece. I could collage in images, or I could draw in an image, but the crack becomes very much like you're looking down at the earth. And so, if it's a little bit more abstract, I kind of like that. Okay. And let's go ahead and try that. Okay. So I think to begin the crack, I'm going to use a darker brown pencil. I've got a couple options in here. There we go. Let me sharpen it. Okay, so this is called bark. So it's a really dark brown. That's the one thing about the Inktense pencils. They don't use a lot of like common, like dark umber or things like that. So with the cracks, I'm just going to kind of freehand, and it's kind of like a river or like a body of water. But the idea is that something is breaking free. It's cracking from underneath somehow. And I have actually done several of these where I've used bodies of water as kind of the inspiration. And it's like the nice thing about these pencils, it's like, oh well, what if I pull out another sort of arm to it out here? What if this comes out? And I'm not going to color in the whole piece, but I want to do a little bit of shading around the edge. And that will create a shadow. Maybe make this come out a little bit. Actually, maybe this gets a little bit wider out here. All right. And so again, I'm not going to shade it all the way in. I'm going to use, I'm just kind of debating if I want to use a different brush. This one has a sharper point on it. So that's a really dark brown. I think, it's kind of the equivalent of a burnt or a raw umber. And just starts to because I shaded it a little bit darker near the edges, that creates some shadows. And starts to kind of give it a little bit of depth. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and dry it. Okay. So I could keep adding some of the Inktense pencils, but what I find is that as you layer it, sometimes the color fades. Like over here around where I did this square earlier, that really is starting to kind of rub off because I'm kind of filling in all the cracks and crevices of the paper, and it just doesn't have any tooth, to really build up more and more. But I find that I can use colored pencil, and actually, um, with the Inktense pencils, some of the edges tend to be kind of washed out. Like right here, I went outside the line, and it's a little bit fuzzy. And so, colored pencil really allows me to, oh, sorry for the noise, allows me to go in and really create um, like really sharp edges. And so So yeah, so I've got one here. It's called Brown Earth. So these are Derwent Coloursoft. And what I find with these is that I want to start with the darkest colors and then work up to lighter colors. So I'm going to use really dark brown, and then I'm also going to use, I'm not going to use black. I'm going to use dark blue. This is called indigo. So indigo is a really nice dark blue. And then with the dark brown, it doesn't really matter which one I use first. Maybe I'll use the blue, and let me sharpen it. I want a nice sharp point on it, because some of this is a little bit, it's, I need to get into some like tight areas with it. And so with this, I'm just going to shade in very much like I did with that Inktense pencil a little while ago, and just kind of shade around the edges. And I don't know if it's really showing up blue on the video. I can see the blue, but when I use the brown on top of it, so I can use this blue to go out and like make the crack wider. When I look at the overall shape, it's like maybe I want to have this kind of branch out. So it's blue. It's very blue right now, but when I put the brown over it, it's definitely gonna change it up a little bit. I mean, I could use the Inktense pencils just like regular colored pencils, but I have regular colored pencils, so might as well use them. And also, regular colored pencils won't run and bleed if I get water on them. So the colored pencil is really going to allow me to get a really defined edge. It's reminding me so much of an animal. Like these are legs and this is a tail. So I don't know. I don't know if I really want that. It's kind of one of those things. It's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. Anyway, we'll live with it for now. Okay, so now I'm going to turn to that brown earth, that dark brown. And so the blue and the brown are going to blend together to create a really nice shadow color. And I've talked about the mixing of blue and brown before and on different things that I've done. But basically, when I was doing my undergraduate degree, well, I say that as like I have a graduate degree, which I don't. I just have a bachelor's. But anyway, so when I was going to college, going to the university, I had a painting professor that basically was like, don't buy black. You're going to make your own black using raw umber and ultramarine blue. And so raw umber is one of the darkest browns in paint. And then ultramarine blue is one of the darkest blues. And so what you can do is you can sort of adjust how much brown or how much blue, and you get some really nice dark values. But I don't know, black is there's a lot of artists that just don't use black, especially in shadows. They can be very overwhelming, and they just often don't look right. And so this way with the brown and the blue, if I've got something that's on the warmer side, I'm shading something that has reds in it, and here this earthy color has some warm earth tones, so I can put more brown in it. And if it's more on the cool side, I could put a little bit more blue in it. And actually, I'm going to blend in some of the warmer colors. But I'm going to shade a little bit of this. Kind of throughout. And so I'm really trying to have it darker around the edge, getting lighter, just because, you know, if light's shining down and this is a crack, then, you know, there's going to be some shadow. And the things that are closer in the middle here are going to be more exposed to light. At least that's kind of my thought process behind it. All right, so here's a color called Dark Terracotta, which is kind of a reddish brown. So I'm going to blend that in. That's going to tie in nicely with the browns that I've used in the background. And turn to this color, which is kind of like an orangey color. It's called pimento, and it's kind of an orangey kind of, not really. It has a slight brownness to it. Okay, so again, kind of trying to. I don't want this to look like it's on top. Okay, so the crack needs to look like it's inside, it's coming out, that there's something in there. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll blend in a different color. I think I'm going to use a little bit of red. And just to help differentiate it a little bit more. Sometimes I'll make this gold if I have, like, I'm using acrylic paint, or I've done blue, I've done, I think, violet. So just that idea that something's underneath, that it's emerging, it's coming out. Now, unfortunately, it can look like this is on top and not like cracked into the piece. So I'm going to turn to white, but I'm not going to use it on here. I'm going to use it around the crack. So if I lighten the edges of the crack, that's going to bring more contrast. And that's going to actually make it look like that this edge right here is above the crack. Just makes it pop out. And so the white is slightly opaque. It's not completely opaque. So I'm not going to be able to cover everything up exactly, you know, and make it pure white. But it blends in with what's underneath. And just, it really raises up the background and pushes that crack down into the surface. Oftentimes when you're doing this with a painting, like using acrylic paint, works out really well, because you can get the white acrylic very, very opaque and really get a highlight on that edge. But with the white, I'm going to try to blend it out. Just so that the background, well, yeah, it's really should be jumping forward now, but the negative space, I guess, I don't know. It's really weird with this one, because what was negative space all of a sudden starts to become the positive space. Yeah, really, I love this combination of the watercolor, well, the Inktense paints, the Inktense pencils, and colored pencils. It's just a great way to kind of build up layers and color and images. The paint and the water soluble pencils really kind of give you the meat of it, but then the colored pencils allow you to go back and really develop nice sharp edges, um, really bring the color up, really it kind of intensify the color. Yeah, still I'm seeing this as some kind of animal, but oh well, that happens. But that's the thing, it's like I'm spending 30 minutes or so, I'm not spending a whole lot of time trying to develop something. I'm not worrying about this as a finished like masterpiece. And maybe it just needs to go different directions. But yeah, I can't. It's an animal. I can see like legs, tail, neck. I don't know. That's what I'm seeing. But anyway, I'm gonna call this done. So let me go ahead and grab a pen and I'll sign it. But yeah, so little crack painting or crack piece. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that. Just something a little bit different today, trying to create a little bit of depth, a little bit of space. And not 100% happy with it. Like I said, I keep seeing that kind of animal type thing, so maybe I'll go back later and work on it and try to kind of fix that or take care of that. Or it's like I just set it aside. Maybe I come back to it tomorrow. Maybe it's not what I think it is. Maybe it's better than I think it is, or maybe I just say, okay, it was just an experiment, something to try. Things don't always turn out exactly the way we planned. And the great thing with working small is sort of like, well, I didn't spend a whole lot of time, energy, or effort into it. So, if it doesn't turn out to be a masterpiece, that's okay. So, if I'm working bigger, I can always spend more time and fix it and kind of nudge it and do things to it that really would help it. So, but I'm just looking at this as a quick experiment, something to try, and it's like you learn something every time you do something. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, happy creating.